actually want something. Still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We want to achieve something, reach some kind of end goal. And on the way, we only think on that goal. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. We don't usually pay attention to everything going on. It's just some kind of middle steps that's have to do. We don't enjoy it. This is not what we want. It just bumps in the road on the way.
Um, Basically, what's happening is that our society has gotten into the position of being basically unhappy and dissatisfied, and have no clue about how to get out of that state. And so that piece of music that we were talking about, where it takes a long time for it to finally come to the resolution, really is basically the journey of life that seems to not ever have any resolution to it. That in
Yeah,
fact people wind up dying without, or then in fact death itself winds up being that resolution. And one of the qualities about it in the music that he actually was stressing was the quality of coming home. That the resolution to that final chord is the home key that the piece is written in. And so it has that quality of coming home to it. Now, this is actually an integral part of the practice of anapanasati, is to go against that, let us call it right now, underlying tendency to sadly plod along, not expecting to get anything. But there is also the other side of that, and that is those who do. What do they go for? One example would be the guy who runs the 100-yard dash. And there he is at the front of the pack, and now he's just this inch close to the finish line, and he raises his hands in the air and he sticks his chest out because he knows he's won the race. This knowledge of winning is something that should be cultivated in the practice of anapanasati. It's extremely important. The way that I have been talking about it is in the sense of gladdening the mind, but the way that you've asked the question, that we want to start looking at it as not as a kind of little thing, but an actually high point of light. Every time we recognize that the mind has wandered away from the breath, it's like a satisfaction or a win. Because basically, every time we catch the mind wandering away from the breath, that's a proof that we, in fact, can come out of it because we just did, which means that we are going to be a champion. We are going to be successful at anapanasati, and that we should have that quality and feeling of success right from the very beginning and right to the top as best we can do it. This is actually in anapanasati is called step number 5 of anapanasati, which is in the Vedana section. And we're discussing the word piti, which is translated into the word rapture. And very few students know what it is, so I've just defined it for you, and now I've identified it. That is a very, very good feeling. And that it gets, uh, let us say, it kind of melts into the next stage, which is then what is called sukkha. So we have piti and sukkha. These are both jhana factors. So when you develop piti, And then it modifies into sukkha. Basically, what that is that the feeling of winning, the feeling of championship, the feeling of success now melts away into satisfaction or contentment. But the satisfaction or contentment must have that quality of success in order for it to be a real quality of satisfaction. For instance, if you're in a fight and you lose the fight, you may be content that the fight is over, really happy the fight is over, but you're really not satisfied because you lost. But if you're in that fight and you win that fight, it might even be just an argument, and you know you won it. Now you can rest, but you can rest in that piece of the satisfaction that comes from success. And so it's that feeling of success is what we're all looking for. That in fact, when we get into competition with other people, when we become conceited and start comparing ourselves to others, either mentally or actually out in the email world of arguing with people. In fact, you can see the internet is just absolutely polluted with terms like trolls and whatnot like that to show that people are arguing constantly with each other. And every one of them has that quality. I want to win this argument. I want to be right. All right.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do we do that? Why do we always, even though we do, that ultimately it seems like we can never get any resolution and finally go home, we're still out there warrioring and fighting for and wanting to get this something. What is it? Well, it's a good feeling of having been successful. That's a really good feeling. But the problem is that out in the normal, ordinary world, people are confused about where that feeling comes from, what its value and purpose is. They're kind of ignorant about the whole show. They're really ignorant about how to feel good. And so they wind up not getting it often enough, and we wind up being disappointed with life. And how they make the big mistake about it is thinking that it has to do with outside world challenges, like arguing on the internet with someone on Facebook or Instagram or where the other place, Reddit.
Yeah,
Oh, dear
Reddit.
old Reddit.
Yeah.
Okay, so people are arguing to feel good. So this feel good is actually an important quality of the path, but it has a different object and a different thing because we're going at it much more naturally. Much more naturally. How we're doing this is that instead of looking for something on the outside to win on, we're going to start using sati as our tool for
Yeah.
judging. Okay, so whenever sati arises, aha, there you are. And you can also use the word that sati is actually the waking up, the bojana itself. In fact, I like the word wakey, wakey, to wake up, get up, see what's happening right now. Come out of our dreams, come out of our dream states, and be here now. And when we do that, we feel very good about being able to do that. That's the new win. The new win is bringing on that joy of having been able to conquer the mind one more time. And pretty soon the confidence builds up. The word is shraddha in the Pali and is wrongly translated as to the word faith. This is not faith. This is confidence based upon success. And not only just ordinary success, but these really high quality successes that we're working on, training the mind for. So as we train the mind for the success of being able to work with the mind, there comes eventually a time in practice when you can say to yourself with great joy and satisfaction, no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can clean it out and come back to this present moment. That's the real job that we have to do. And as you can see, what I'm talking about is that not only this is an aspect of anapanasati, but it also fits right into the other ways that I've described it to you. In the sense of when the mind wanders away and you recognize that and sati occurs, you gladden the mind. You say, aha, I caught you. So this aha, I caught you now actually has the quality of success, but it's not a little success. This is a major success. Why is it such a major success? Because this is the change of your life. This is a major success because all of those people who cannot do this will basically be damned to following the old programs and scripts in their own mind so closely that you could call it destiny. And so this is the wake up, to be able to wake up. This is Bojana, this is Bodhi. And so when you get that, it's an enormous feeling of success. Because basically you're saying, I've got the path. I know what to do now, and I'm claiming that success. I win. Now, there's not a lot of I in it in the spiritual world.
You still here? You dropped out for a bit.
Okay, a lot of I, me, or mine. There's a lot of I, me, or mine in the normal world of the people who are looking on the outside or looking in the sensual world to find this rapture. Within this world of this rapture is nothing but a process. This is not you. So in that regard, it's not I win, but it's more on the quality and the very heavy quality of emphasis on winning. It's like the lion's roar. Ah!
So
Got it.
So it's the same kind of success that we achieve in the outside world, only that in the outside world there are no definition of success that can last. It can't be permanent.
No, that's the whole problem of it, is it's always temporary. And the reason for that is because we're depending upon circumstances that are constantly in flux in the outside world.
Yeah, so
but when we change that frame of reference, we recognize, oh no, this is merely a skill to be developed.
So we're kind of
satisfied.
Yeah, so we're kind of rewriting the definition of what success is.
Exactly. Precisely. Because the old definition is not accurate and it doesn't lead to success. It more than likely leads to failure and disappointment. This is the kind of success that works whenever it's practiced correctly.
I see that. It's kind of obvious in retrospect, you could say.
Absolutely. And the more that I teach, the more you'll recognize that this is not only the actual truth, but dang, why didn't I see this before? It becomes more and more clear, more and more obvious, and at the same time, the Dhamma that looks so diverse and so full of many intricacies and all of that winds up coming back to just one thing. And this one thing is how to practice correctly. Because the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path is built right into Anapanasati. That the second Noble Truth, the depths of that is Paticca Samuppada, but practicing the Vedana and the Sita aspects of Anapanasati is the actual application of the theoretical part of Paticca Samuppada. That when we understand the mind works, we can talk about it theoretically, and I always do, by the way, talk about it theoretically in the pieces of the Paticca Samuppada and the way that it puts together. But the actual experience of Paticca Samuppada is done through the practice of Anapanasati, right at this level that we're beginning to talk about right now. And
Sounds
at that
reasonable.
level. Mhm. And so, in that regard, you could go so far as to say that correct practice is more important than any theoretical background. And so, if correct practice is done, then it will be correct practice in the Vajrayana, or it'll be in the Theravada, or even in the Zen. Correct practice, that which gets the job done, is the important part, not the theoretical underpinnings. And in fact, one of the biggest problems with those theoretical underpinnings is people get so entrapped and so enthralled in that they never actually practice Anapanasati because they've fallen far too much in love with the theoretical underpinnings.
Yeah, I can see that. Plowing, actually going out and plowing a field to sow something, it produces better results than sitting inside and thinking on ways to do it.
Mm-hmm. So we have now been actually discussing step number 5 of Anapanasati for a while. That in fact the way that it normally goes is that we practice with the long in and out breath, step 1, and then we begin to practice step 2 of Anapanasati, the what is called a shorter, which means a more relaxed or more normal breath in and out. And then what normally happens to people with that shorter breath is the mind will wander away. And then we need that sati to remember to come bring that mind back. Once we bring it back, we want to bring it back gently, happily, and in fact, with that quality of winning. I can see the mind. I can wake up, wakey, wakey, come out of whatever the mind was doing and come back to the breath. In that regard, by being able to see that the mind has wandered away, that's actually step 9 of Anapanasati, experiencing the mind. And now you're experiencing it as hindered. And now we're going to immediately experience it as unhindered. Now we're going to experience rapture in the mind. Aha! I got it.
So every time we remember and actually wins, we are taking a small step until for that whole rewriting the definition of winning. We are
Yes,
learning.
except for one thing. That time clock, I wouldn't put in that regard. I would put it horizontally in the sense of this now and this now and this now. And every time we practice this, we develop skill just a little bit. So it's always in the here now that we're doing this. But we get really good at doing it in the here now.
Yeah,
And we
that's
begin to really like it because we feel like a champion at being able to stay in the here now. And so this is the quality then of going to the next step, which is then from the rapture of the wind into the sukkha, that can in fact in English be called the word bliss, but it's basically a deep satisfaction. Now when this occurs, this now is when we have all of the jhana factors together. What are the jhana factors that we're talking about? One is that the mind is free from hindrance. That's the major one. Number two, we have given ourselves a great big happy slap in the face, a great big joyous pineapple or something. That's that rapture, that aha, when it's the kind of feeling, in fact, if you go into a casino and you'll see people putting money, one coin after another, into a slot machine, and then pulling the lever, and then hoping for something. All right? The reward is the money. No, the reward is the feeling of winning. That's what they're there for. They know that they're losing money. The money is not the issue. The issue is the feeling good of that win.
Yeah, I see that.
All right, so that's what you're going to start practicing for yourself, to give that feeling of satisfaction that comes from the success, the win, the got it, the woo 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 woo. You know what I'm talking about. All right, so with the stars and stripes and the banners and the fireworks display and everything like that, having a big huge internal celebration, not letting it last too long, because then we melt into this state of satisfaction. So from the success, from the win, we come into the state of satisfaction. With that sukkha, we now have all the jhana factors collected together, including the fact that now the mind is fit for work. It's been sufficiently gladdened, it's been sufficiently trained now to sit at least a little while in this state of sukha. And from this vantage point, or this state of first jhana, we're now going to put the mind to work. And what is the work to do? To guard the mind for what's going to arise next. Because we're going to start making judgments about it. One of the things that can arise next, we would experience or understand to be a thought. And if mindfulness or sati is still there, then when that thought arises, we'll know whether it's a worthwhile thought coming into the mind or whether it's a not worthwhile thought coming into the mind. And that's going to be kind of a yes or no. You either get in or you don't get in. Now, the kind of thoughts that don't get in are the kind of thoughts would be of the past, of the future, of an unsettledness, of a non-security, of a restlessness, or a boredom, or a dissatisfaction, or something like that that comes in the form of thought in the past or the future. Now let's talk about what kinds of thoughts would be wholesome. Thoughts of, aha, I see you, Mr. Bad Thought. Thoughts of, this is really nice. Thoughts about, this pleasant moment is really good. We can also have thoughts about, what is the nature of suffering? And what is the nature of being free from suffering? You can ask yourself the question, right now, am I free from suffering? The answer is, yeah! Yes! And so we have yet another hit of that rapture, that pity. Yes, the mind is free from suffering. Isn't that like, so wonderful? So this is the way that we begin to practice, so that then we come back to this state of satisfaction, this state where the mind is capable of actually monitoring what kind of thoughts we're going to allow in. Are they the kind of thoughts that would have to do with the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, thinking about anapanasati, thinking about mindfulness? So thinking about the path factors while we're sitting there with that really, really sharp mind is quite beneficial to help us to put this whole thing together in a way that's completely understandable. Okay, so this is
Is
one of the ways of practice. Go ahead.
it okay to like question? Is there any place can I find some dissatisfaction anywhere? Or
Yes, that's also something you can do. You can look for, is there dissatisfaction? And if there is, let's take a look at it and throw it out. All right. Eventually, in this practice, and when I say eventually, it may be on the third day or it may be in the third year, not quite sure when it happens, but eventually, by watching and staying in this steady state that we're calling the first jhana, that has these jhana factors, including the sukkha, this really happy, watchful state. Eventually, what you're going to start seeing by watching is really deep stuff that is normally referred to like as anxiety, tension, deep fear, that kind of stuff you can also see. So, what are
very
you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? Exactly what we're doing with it if it comes up in the form of a thought. And that is, aha, I caught you. I can see you. I can feel you, Mr. Anxiety. I know what you are. And in this regard, you see, what happens when people normally in the world experience anxiety, they think that something is undone, something is dangerous, some something needs to be performed, some act needs to occur because I feel this way, because I feel unsettled that something needs to be done. So if I can figure out what it is to do and do that, then I'll feel good. So imagine an old time back in the Stone Age. There's a guy sitting in his hovel. He's got a fire, and he's experiencing this anxiety. And so he starts to think, "Why do I feel like this?" And this happens very quick in the mind, by the way. And then he says, "Eureka! I know what it is. I've got to go fix the wall. The goats will get out if I don't fix the wall." So he goes out in the middle of the night to gather some stones, and he fixes the wall. He comes back into the hovel. He sits down and the anxiety comes back. The anxiety and the wall were not connected. Now, if you think about it, you do that yourself all the time. Is you find problems to solve when in fact there is no real problem ever in the first place. What there was for the source of this stuff was anxiety, a deep internal restlessness, a dissatisfied feeling, a feeling of needing something to be done. So we're going to start working with that kind of feeling directly. And the way that we
so
do that is by watching it directly to see
it's
that stuff and apply anapanasati to it, most specifically with that deep breath. So if you can locate where it is in the chest or wherever, which would be mostly that's where that anxiety is they feel like an empty hole inside. The heart is empty. It's been part of our language social structure for a long time. But there's also another way that they experience, and that is with shoulders up, with tensions in the neck, etc., like that, because of the old problem of, well, when a lion takes down a gazelle, what's the death throw? It's in the neck. Okay, why did the lions have a mane? It's because they're trying to protect their own necks from the other dudes that got a mane. So that's the quality that some people will carry their anxiety and tension in their shoulders and even get up that way. And so one of the qualities then will be to naturally to relax the shoulders, to relax the body, to start working with the anxiety directly as a bodily sensation and experiencing that, as opposed to turning it into a mental problem to be solved, a fence to be built, a fight to be had on the internet.
yeah, anxiety is familiar territory. I know I know the territory.
Well, now you'd have some new tools to deal with that.
Yeah, what I've done lately, I have finding the location and the kind of form of the physical feeling is the first step. but that feeling in itself is not what is uncomfortable. It's just a physical feeling.
Mm.
It's the mind's reaction, the thoughts coming as a fact, as a consequence of that feeling.
Yes.
That is,
And at this level, you're going to catch that before that happens. You're not at this level, you're going to see that anxiety directly before it takes the mind out for a ride, out for a road trip. Which is nothing but a hindrance. And if you see the mind out on that road trip, that's the time to say, aha, I see you. Put that road trip aside, come back to the joy of the success, and then the settling into feeling good about it. And now you can say, all right, where did that road trip come from? Who's the culprit? Who started that stuff? Ah, it was the anxiety. And so that's how we can start to look at that stuff. The more you see it on your own, the more you'll know for yourself what to do about it. And normally, just taking a nice, really deep breath chases that anxiety away, especially if it's only a little bit because you caught it early.
But I think it might be a good idea. Perhaps not. Perhaps to. I've been trying to not let it go immediately, but just try to get a feel for how the thought feels, where it kind of appears. To tune into the frequency, well, like on a radio station, because
yes, but you're only describing the way that it's set out in the sutras, and that is take a good close look at it, inspect it, note it well, experience it correctly, and then allow it to melt away, to tranquilize it.
I think it not too long ago it was very invisible. It doesn't. I never kind of knew it was real. But now, as I have studied it for a while, it becomes easier and easier to see. It's I think it's an experience as clear as like seeing through the eyes. It's just a matter of learning how to see it.
Right. So let's make sure then that we can get the mind fit for work so that it can see that stuff. That's the whole point of the anapanasati is getting the mind fit for this work so that it can see what's going on at that level. And what you're saying is that as you've been progressing in your meditation, your mind is getting better so that you can begin to see that stuff. I'm saying, okay, let's add this component of the real joy of success, followed by that steady state of sukkha, that quality of just settling into the job of watching what's going on. There's basically two areas to watch, and that would be the area of the thoughts that come, and then the other one would be the area of the feelings that would be associated either with the body or with the mind that come up, because the feelings can give rise to the thoughts, but thoughts can also give rise to feelings. Sometimes they get into a vicious fight with each other.
Yeah, it's a good feedback loop.
So once we begin to get this practice going of starting to watch this stuff, we can then begin to put it into the theoretical context of Paticca Samuppada. And normally the way that I do that is by talking about it with the first of the, let us say, beginning parts of the Paticca Samuppada, which is the five aggregates. And so the next time you call, we're going to start talking about the five aggregates. But guess what? The five aggregates are nothing but the Satipatthana that we're already working on. It's just another frame of reference. But in this frame of reference, we're going to start looking at it in the context of Paticca Samuppada directly. But we're already practicing it. That's the important part. If we practice correctly, then the results will be there. And so the theoretical back part of it is to make sure that you understand why we're doing this practice. But I think you're getting a pretty good idea of it. But there's some interesting things that will arise for you. So let's talk about the five aggregates next time.
I will. Should I read up on it?
No. Just wait on it, or remind me that I said I was going to talk about the five aggregates, and then off we'll go.
I wrote it down, so I will remind you.
Excellent. Do you have any final questions about how this practice?
No, not really. I was talking last time about this, my cyclic period. I noticed it brings along a certain tiredness, dullness. Mm-hmm. Very, very typically. So it's a week or two per cycle. It's kind of hard to be.
And how about that long breath? Does that have any effect upon that tiredness?
Yes, to a certain extent, of course. But it's there. But it's just an interesting point of observation.
Yes, the body goes through those kinds of cycles, and it's good for you to begin to notice them, because otherwise you don't know and become confused. So the more that you know about yourself, the more you know about the body, then the more you'll have as an opportunity through wisdom to live your life in a really joyful, happy way.
Yeah, of course. The more I know about it, the smaller a reason I have to think that something is wrong.
Right, because there really is nothing wrong.
Oh, my practice went to shit in the last 2 weeks. I have to quit.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
And in that regard, my job is more to be a cheerleader than it is to be a coach. You know, a coach, he's a guy who says, get up off of the ground and run around the park. You know, that kind of behavior. But the cheerleaders are the ones that say, yay, hey, go, go, go. Well, that's my job. I'm more of a cheerleader than I am a coach. You be your own coach.
That's good. No, I'm not quitting anytime soon.
Great. Good.
So,
Ron,
see you next time. Five aggregates.
Excellent. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.